me just, Rihanna's just pointed out to me that I stopped the recording, so that would have been useful. So first and foremost, our background, I run a multidisciplinary clinic in Emsworth, alongside Rhiannon, who works as our practice manager. We're both qualified coaches, so we both trained as certified coaches, and we do that alongside what we do in clinic, and we work with anyone from dentists, osteopaths, we work with some of you privately, Pilates instructors and things like that. And what we really work to do as coaches is not tell people what to do, but to work with you to help realise any goals that you have. Rhiannon's background is in marketing, PR and business development and journalism, so that's where her skills really come to the fore. And firstly, I just wanted to say, like, this isn't going to be perfect. We are just diving in and trying to offer support where we can. And this is way outside of our comfort zone. It's new for us as well, so you bear with us. We're going to do the best that we possibly can, and hopefully it will be of value to you. So we're not going to be perfect, but we're here to help. So with that, I'm going to attempt to share my screen now. So with the magic of technology, hopefully, can you all now see this screen? Can we see what's going on here? If you can just post in the chat and say that you can see it, that would be lovely. I'm going to shared window to the front, sorry. Yeah, so I'm getting some thumbs up, so I'm hoping that you can all see it. Yeah, lots of chat. All right. There we go, sorry, bear with me. Resume share, there we go. Philippa. Sorry, I appear to have lost my mouse. Bear with me. New share. Share that. Okay. Right. Can we all see this?
Sharon's pause, screen shared.
Sorry, folks, we're just bearing with us. See, it's a good job I caveated this by saying that it's not going to be perfect. So let's try this again. Let's just see what you're saying in the chat. Yes, good. Right, so everybody could see it. So I'll just stop faffing about, shall I, and actually get it up there. So, there we go. Right, so managing your clinic through a period of uncertainty. I've now got the chat hanging over the top of that, which I presume is going to be in the way. Let me get rid of that.
You're doing a great job.
Right, fine. Okay, so I am going to hand over to Rhiannon in a second. There's a couple of questions that we want you to just bear in mind as we're going through this. And these are the questions that we always seek to answer over the next, sort of the things that we've been thinking about for what we want over the next couple of months. And it's, where do I want to go? How do I get there? And am I able to stay on this path? So these are the sort of key questions when it comes to putting anything in place, and when it comes to planning for the future. That's what we kind of look to do in the questions that we want to answer, and it helps give us a starting point. So with that in mind, I'll hand over to Rhiannon.
Thank you very much. So what I'm going to be talking about is the planning and preparing for the upcoming months ahead. Obviously, none of us really know exactly what's going to happen, but everyone's experience is completely different and individual, but we're going to do this together. So what are you doing here? Are you here for CPD? Are you here for improving your soft skills, maybe learning a little bit about what coaching is? Or even trying to enhance your leadership skills. So if you've got a pen and paper there, just write that down of what you're here for, as kind of like a session goal, really, of what you want out of this today. So a quote that I really like is from Ivan Turgenev: if we wait for the moment when everything is ready, we shall never begin. So this is
pretty much us at the moment.
Yes. So this, we hope, will deliver you some value today, and that is our aim. But if we'd procrastinated and tried to make it perfect, it'd probably be in 5 years' time. So at least we're delivering it. What I wanted to say is that coaching is a conversation between two people, and that the role of a coach is to support our client in achieving their goal and their success in what they're trying to achieve. So just to manage your expectation, we're coaches, so we're not here to tell you what to do or how to progress over these coming few weeks. We're just trying to help you figure out the next steps to what you want to do and give you some food for thought. So next slide.
Got it.
Thank you. So again, if you've got that notebook, or even you can just draw on the desk with your finger, if you just draw a nice circle for me, that is your comfort zone. So that is where we were before all of this began, and our comfort zone is on the sofa with our dog, watching some sort of TV or something together. So that's our comfort zone. And if you draw your next circle bigger around that, that is your stretch zone. So this is called your learning zone, and this is really important. It's where you feel excited, you feel challenged, and that's the growth zone right there. So that's where we're sort of coming in and out of at the moment in this situation. So if you could draw another circle around there, and that is your panic zone. So again, we've been in and out of this the past couple of weeks. You may be in that at the moment. So a really good tip for you is to look at this recording in a couple of days' time and take a little bit more from it.
Yeah, at the moment, I think everybody, I was talking to Chris Chip from Patient Centred Training yesterday, and I think at the moment everybody is teetering between the stretch and the panic zone, and when we're in panic zone, we're not going to take in any learning. So it's going to be something that we would urge you to sort of listen to the other information that's out there, join in the other webinars that are happening. I'm going to talk about those later. Even if it feels like some of the information you've heard it before, we know in the panic zone it's not a space for learning. So if you're operating from that place, then be patient with yourself and be gentle, because it's going to take a while for things to be absorbed, and you'll get different information from different sources.
So the way to get out of the panic zone is to break down what is going on. Really useful way of doing that is to write that down, and again we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. And I've got the sun shining in on me, great. So with coaching, we use the GROW model. It's something that we're not going to talk about in depth today. And I want to talk to you about this goal setting process that you can see on your screen now. I'm going to give you a link to this at the end of the session in the chat. And I'm also going to put it in our event as well, so you can download it for free from our website. So this is something that we produced as a resource for our workshops for chiropractors and other healthcare professionals. They use it to help patients break down what it is they're trying to achieve. And this is really relevant for us today as well. So if you take out patient, then you can put in yourself or what's going on at the moment.
So this is what we've actively been using over the past couple of days since this happened. So anyone who's asked sort of how we've managed to motor ahead with what we've been doing, it's through using this process. So that's why we're sharing it with you, because when we're in that panic zone, we're in that place of overwhelm, trying to work out where the heck to start is a real challenge. And sort of a practical application of this was in clinic, we had some things when all of this happened. We had the urgent stuff, the short-term urgent stuff that needed to be addressed there and then. We had longer term, slightly less urgent stuff that we knew that we could kind of put off until a later date and we didn't need to worry about. In terms of making those practical, rational decisions quickly, we need to not operate from a place of fear and not make those decisions from a place of fear. And it really helps to have a structure in place that allows you to do that. So, you know, on a very basic level, we took all of the things that we needed to address in clinic. And if any of you have seen the spreadsheet that I put up in the BCA members the other day, this was an example of it. I was looking at what I needed as an end goal, or what I needed to help over the next couple of weeks. And I knew, for me, just the way that I work, I like to have things written down. So I knew that my end goal, as I wanted it, was a timeline of the important things that were coming up, the important dates, the things that I needed to remember, the stuff that I'd already actioned. So that was then broken down into component parts. such as the coronavirus job retention scheme, the small business rates relief, things like my corporation tax, you know, various bits and bobs broken down into the component parts. And then once that overview was kind of put in place, I could go back to the first things first. And I like to start off with something really easy and really simple. So actually the first thing that I then looked at once Rhiannon had taught me down off my tree was things like our dustbins in clinic, because I pay £30 a month to have our bins collected. And at the moment I'm not producing any waste from clinic. So I knew that those practical things that were short-term urgent would have a massive impact on our cash flow at a later date, because certainly initially it was a lot of firefighting. You know, there was a lot of anxiety around what do we do with our staff, how do we reduce our overheads. We didn't know whether we were going to get any governmental support, so we knew that we kind of had to sort out our immediate short-term cash flow issue, and that's how we basically started.
And we focused on that with looking at our direct debits on our bank account and writing down the ones that we could affect now. So that's how we did that one. So we went, first things first, you did that, didn't you?
Yeah.
And then so focusing on that specific area that you've sort of put into columns, then you can look at that specific area. So how will you know is a really great coaching question that I love. How will you know, because it's very different for other people, how will you know that goal is achieved and that you've been successful with that, and when will you achieve it by? It's really difficult at the moment, because some of you are stressed and in a state of panic and fear that you can't really make too many decisions from that state. So be gentle with yourself, yeah. Which again we're going to talk a little bit about later on. So really good tip to stay motivated is to review and write down exactly what you've achieved so far. I don't know about you, but at the end of the day, sometimes we're doing lots of things, and at the end of the day we think, oh, what have we done today? I know I've been busy, but what have I done? So it's really important to write those things down, and that keeps you motivated to keep moving forward and reminds you that actually you have done things today, even if that is just to go to the supermarket to get your basics, to keep you healthy and keep you going. So I think that the next thing we're going to do is we'll move on to the next slide, and I'll be in the chat to answer any questions that you've got about that section. And
yeah, cool. Okay. So I am going to just shimmy over and probably get the sun in my eyes, but there we go. So I'm going to talk a bit now about communicating effectively at the moment, and communicating effectively with patients, but also with your team. There's always a lot of crossover when we talk about communication, and even if you are a sole practitioner and you don't have a team, some of this is still going to be relevant to you. So I'm not going to teach you communication skills. I think there are other people out there like Owain Evans. I know he's got a webinar coming up next week on communication skills, I think for telehealth specifically. We're also talking to Chris Chippendale of Patient Centred Training about doing some other webinars coming up. I don't really believe that we ought to be teaching listening skills. You know, if you are actively listening and you're actively present, you don't need to learn how to pretend that you are through things like maintaining eye contact and maintaining a good body language. So if you're actively listening, then you're practicing those listening skills. So I'm not going to teach you how to do that. It should just be something that happens. And I think it's something that we're naturally all pretty good at as chiropractors. There's always room to hone those. And I think particularly as we're now moving over to telehealth, for example, which for many of us is going to be a completely new way of working, we're going to have to learn how to use those soft skills that we're good at when we're one-on-one with a person, and learn how to make a connection when we're talking to somebody over webcam, because it is a strange experience. You know, it's weird for me at the moment because I know there's almost 200 of you out there, but I can't see any of you, so it's interesting. So when it comes to communication, and when it comes to particularly communicating at the moment, I would always say put your human values first. Sometimes we run away from the values, the things that we want to be known as, and people are going to be looking at how we react to this crisis and how we behave in this crisis, not only as human beings and how we behave personally, but how we behave as employers, how we behave as a chiropractic community. And we need to think about the values that we hold and what those are. So whether that's kindness, caring, compassion, respect, credibility, you know, all of those things, if you identify what your values are, they will guide your actions over the coming months, and they will give you a really strong foundation from which to operate. So put your human values first. Establishing thinking about dinner. Establishing trust and credibility during a time of crisis. There are 4 basic ways that they suggest that we can do this. And it's really important because people are very quick to pick up on a lack of authenticity. And it's building that trust and credibility that will have a real impact. Sorry, somebody is saying that the sun is in the way, so I'm just going to sort that out. There we go. It's mood lighting, slightly soft focus. So we talk about empathy and caring, and the research time after time shows us that when we're empathetic and when we're caring, it makes it easier for people to take on board the message that we're trying to share, and it makes it easier for the receiver to accept the message that we're sharing. I don't think there is anything wrong with acknowledging that this is a scary situation for all of us, that it's a frustrating situation, and showing that empathy to the people that you're dealing with is important, and acknowledging what's going on. Honesty and openness. In terms of conveying information, at the moment it's really difficult because everything changes every day. So the only thing that we can do is express honesty and say that the information that we've got is accurate at the time that we're sharing it. And if we don't have the answers, we need to acknowledge that we don't have the answers, and just try to give as much credible information as you possibly can when you're communicating with your patients. And that includes limiting the professional jargon, so making sure that we're not talking in shorthand, in effect. You know, we love how chiropractors like to abbreviate everything. Competence and expertise is an interesting one, because as chiropractors we don't have expertise in crisis management. This is a new thing for us because it's not like any of us want to live through a pandemic more than once in our lifetime. Our role here, and certainly from reading what the NHS is saying, our role here is to provide a stoic and reassuring presence. And whilst we can't directly assist with what's happening with the coronavirus, we can position ourselves as competent, expert, knowledgeable professionals who are there working to support the NHS in this time of crisis. There was an interesting talk yesterday on telehealth. I know many of you were on that one yesterday with Jonathan Field and Jane Brassington, and they were talking about how chiropractors are perceived to be slightly behind the curve at the moment when it comes to telehealth. Certainly yoga instructors and Pilates instructors have been doing it for years, and so there's almost this impression that chiropractors have been caught off guard, which of course impacts on our public perception of being competent. So for many of us, we're not necessarily caught off guard, we've just had to move over to a new way of working. I think it's important to think about the message that we're conveying to our patients. So, you know, for some of us, we've kept those messages private, and, you know, we're kind of quietly freaking out on the BCA page with other people, and then our messages that we're sharing with our patients are that, you know, we've kind of just casually segued over to this new way of working, and here's our new telehealth offerings and things like that. So definitely consider the messages that you're conveying, and are they positioning you as somebody who's knowledgeable, who's reputable, and you know, who is credible in this situation. And commitment and dedication. This is something that we really struggled with, because ideally with the dedication, when something happens, particularly when a crisis happens, you want to kind of state your dedication, you know, your commitment, your aim. Initially, you want to be upfront about it, what you hope to achieve. And for us, that was really fluid. So our initial dedication, our initial commitment to our patients was that we weren't going to close. We said that we have no plans to close a clinic for the foreseeable future. And within about 3 days, it became quite clear that actually there was a very real risk that we were going to close. And so we had to change our commitment and change our dedication again. and say we're going to be working as normally as possible for as long as possible. It got to the point where I said that so often I thought I'd have it tattooed on my forehead. But it's important to try and state your objective to people. So what are you hoping to achieve out of this? What commitment are you making to them at the moment, and how are you going to reach that objective? So, for example, we've consistently communicated to people to say that we are going to be offering telehealth. That's going to continue. So there is going to be no variation to sort of our availability on the phone. Our opening hours have changed because the clinic phone is just diverted to my mobile. And we are consistently telling people that we're sharing the experience with them. So we're meeting them where they are, on that level of slight fear, and reinforcing and reassuring them that we are present and we're going to remain present until the situation is solved, or we come to a new way of working, or whatever happens over the next couple of months. And you show your dedication by sharing in those moments of crisis. I think I was looking into this earlier, and sort of if anybody remembers Deepwater Horizon, the CEO of BP after that oil spill in 2010, he was quoted as saying that he wanted his life back, because it was all taking up too much of his own time, and that's the exact wrong message that we want to convey. We want to make sure that we're meeting people where they are, that we're part of this with them. And remember to follow up with people afterwards as well. Put a note in your diaries to follow up with patients when all of this is over. Get back in touch with people. And again, that should be part of your commitment and your dedication to make sure that you're going to follow up with them, so that you're seeing them through this entire process. With that in mind, think hard about the messages that you're putting out there. There's a lot going on at the moment that I see on social media and places like that about distraction techniques, about keeping busy, keeping our mind off things. And actually we need to try and give our feelings space and acknowledge what those scary feelings are. It's a CBT technique for anybody who's done any CBT. We so often feel these feelings of anxiety, of fear, of vulnerability, and instead of approaching those feelings with curiosity and trying to identify what we're feeling and where, we run away with them, or we run away from them, because it's scary to have to acknowledge that we're outside of our comfort zones, that we're anxious about the coming months ahead. But if you actually explore those feelings and give them space and look at them with curiosity, it becomes a heck of a lot easier to handle. And what we don't want to do is start cultivating distraction techniques that we class as coping mechanisms that actually aren't coping mechanisms. So, for a lot of people, the biggest coping mechanism out there for many is alcohol. And obviously it's fine as a coping mechanism, but only if you're acknowledging that it is a coping mechanism and you're not using it as a way to avoid those feelings. So just accept what you're feeling, give your feelings space, and acknowledge what's going on at the moment, because I think we're all scared. Even anyone out there who looks like they've got their stuff together is still scared. I've jumped ahead too fast. Now is really an opportunity for us to show our worth in terms of the non-hands-on stuff that we do, because we know all of the research time and time again tells us that it's the non-hands-on stuff that has a real impact with what we do. So it's not just about physically being in the treatment room with patients. So I would suggest thinking about what you can offer your patients over the coming months. So for some of us, that's going to be telehealth. For other people, that might not work. You might be a paper-based clinic, and the idea of getting on a webcam with a patient is just way outside your comfort zone. But there is an opportunity here to start pushing the other things that we do so well, because we do as chiropractors, we do these soft skills, we do communication, we do the reassurance, we do that very, very well. So although we can't get hands-on with patients at the moment, there's still an awful lot that we can offer them. And I would suggest thinking about generating goodwill in the clinic and in the weeks ahead. It's interesting at the moment because we don't yet know the answers to basic questions like if we earn an income through telehealth for anyone who's trying to reclaim 80% of their wages through the coronavirus job retention scheme, or for those of us who are going to be classed as furloughed employees, or those of us who are self-employed. I know there's more information coming out about this later. But as you'll see from some of the stuff that's been talked about in the BCA members, we don't yet know if earning an income, any kind of income, will render you ineligible for government support. So we do need to think about generating goodwill and providing that stoic, reassuring presence for our communities that we might not necessarily earn any money for. But I don't know about you, but at the moment, certainly for me, although not earning an income at the moment is a scary place to be, the goodwill and the faith in keeping that relationship with my patients is more important to me at the moment. But that's me speaking for myself. So stay clear, stay kind when you're communicating with people, and stay direct. And with that, I'm going to move on to talking a little bit about leadership skills. And again, when I say leadership skills, I don't just mean people who are a practice manager or who have a team of people. I mean anybody who's working as a leader within your community, and that's all of us. So it's still applicable even if you are a solo practitioner. Many of you are probably familiar with the concept of leaning in from Sheryl Sandberg, who I think is the Chief Operating Officer of Google. At the moment, we're going to have to lean into the discomfort. It's as simple as that. We are incredibly polarized at the moment, just in general, just as human beings. All of the studies tell us. There was a study, I think 10,000 Americans in Pew University, that showed that we are more polarized as people than we ever have been in our lives. We can't have even basic conversations now without it devolving into arguments. I mean, we used to be able, as Brits, we used to be able to stick to talking about the weather, and now if you encounter a flat earther or somebody who denies climate change, you can see how even that as a topic isn't safe anymore. So we've lost that balance between listening and talking, and as such, we've lost the ability to communicate. I've been really reassured by some of the conversations that have been going on the BCA members page, and I actually think as a community we're more connected now than we ever have been. There has been more collaborative thinking, more joined up thinking, more forward thinking, and more support than I've ever seen, and I hope that a lot of you would agree with me there that it has been truly outstanding. It's been really inspirational to see. So Brene Brown, some of you, again, might be quite familiar with her and her work. She has done a huge amount of work into leadership, into vulnerability. And one of the favourite things that she says is that brave leaders are never silent around the tough conversations. And at the moment, like me, if you're a leader, if you have a team, if you've got employees, you've probably had some really, really tough conversations recently. And we need to build our resilience to have these conversations, because if we lose the ability to have them, then we become able to talk about people instead of talking to them, and we want to be able to talk to them. So sometimes as a leader, we think that showing any kind of vulnerability is exposing a chink in our armor, and it's the complete opposite. It shows courage. It shows that we're out there and we're doing our very best. Everyone is afraid of being vulnerable at the end of the day. Nobody likes to be seen as though they don't have the answers. But if we don't have these difficult conversations with our teams about the stuff that we don't know that's coming up, it creates this pervasive message that these feelings are bad, that vulnerability is bad, and it corrodes their psychological safety, and it corrodes their trust in the team at a time when we need that safety and we need that trust more than ever before. So put simply, for example, for us, we don't know if there are going to be jobs for everybody in our clinic when they come back. We don't know. That is the fact of the matter. And whilst we don't want to create fear, we also don't want to disregard that. So whilst it's tough to lean into that conversation and to say to our employees, look, we don't know what the future looks like, but what we do know is that we're working to safeguard your jobs as much as possible, and we will keep you communicated. We will keep communicating with you, and we will keep you updated as much as possible. We're acknowledging the situation. We're not negating it. We are creating an atmosphere where people can come and talk to us about what's going on.
So what about new patients?
Sorry?
What about new patients?
New patients? What about new patients? Sorry, answering the question. Oh, so somebody's asked a question about charging for new patients. If it's okay, I'll come back to that slightly later on, because I'm a bit like Dory from Finding Nemo, and if I lose my stream, then it's gone forever. So, so when we're talking about working as a team leader, this is again something that I would urge you to think about, the difference between being a knower and being right, or being a learner and getting it right. And certainly everything that I've learned this week has been brand new knowledge that I've learned and I've shared. And we need to be able to say that we don't have the answers, but that we're willing to learn and we're willing to get it right. We're very good at doing that when it's a patient. You know, the amount of times I hear even GPs, for example, saying, I don't know, but I will find out. And that's a really powerful statement to say. And we can use this with our employees as well, and with our team. We can acknowledge and say, we don't have the answers, but we are learning, we're finding out what they are, and we're working to get it right. Because trying to be right all the time is absolutely exhausting. Trying to have all of the answers and all of the knowledge for everybody all of the time is virtually impossible, and it's a really heavy load to carry around. So I would always say, try to be a learner and try to work towards getting it right rather than work towards being right, because being right doesn't serve to achieve anything other than rubbing your own ego. I brought up the chat. Where's that one going? Oh no, now I've really brought up the chat. Sorry. Where's that gone? No one can see it. No one can see it. Oh, good. I'm being reassured that no one can see it. It's just that I can see it. Oh, lost my drift now. That's what I meant. Oh, sorry. Hang on, folks. There we go. Sorry, I'm just going to check that. Rhiannon, can you see that screen? Yeah. Yeah, good. Sorry. Okay, minor technical glitch there. So, this quote is from Stephen Covey, who wrote the 7 Effective Habits of Highly Effective People. I can never remember how many it is. This is something that I think is really important to think about when it comes to talking to your team. I had a situation last week with a member of my team who is one of my favourite people in the world, and she's been working with us for years. And when coronavirus, when it started hitting and it started getting real, she's got 2 young kids. She's got a self-employed husband who is the breadwinner in the family. She lives with an elderly mum. Her brother has had a heart transplant. You know, she had a lot on her shoulders. And I came into work last week and she was in tears at the reception desk, and she had a little bit of a meltdown. And it was all to do with anxiety and uncertainty. And the first thing that I asked her after I made her a very strong cup of tea with a lot of sugar was, what questions can I answer? That's a really powerful question to ask your team members. What questions can I answer? So when they're dealing with times of uncertainty, asking them what it is that they wish to know. And again, not being a knower and knowing it all, but being a learner, just identifying what questions they have that you can answer can provide a lot of psychological reassurance at this time. And so that's something to bear in mind. And the next question that I asked her, and that I actually asked all of my team, which is another one that I would suggest that you bear in mind, is, what does support look like from me over the next couple of weeks? So I needed to know their expectations, what kind of support they were looking to receive, and also how they wanted to receive that support. So it can be really tempting to dish out support or dish out guidance or instructions that work for you. But I needed to know what their expectations were, and how I could meet them at a place where they would find that most beneficial. And it gave me a better idea of what our lovely receptionist was looking for and what she needed from me, which made it a heck of a lot easier to manage the situation. After I'd asked those 2 questions, I then shut up. So when I'm talking to my team, I try to keep my mouth shut as much as possible so that I can listen to them. This gives them the opportunity to ask the difficult questions. And again, sometimes as leaders, we feel the responsibility to have all the answers and to do all of the talking. And I think sometimes if we just sit back and listen, we can help guide our team through these period of changes just by having these conversations with them and allowing them to guide the conversation where they need the conversation to go, rather than working on our own agenda. So the concept of rumbling, this is an interesting concept that many of you will have heard of. This is something that I would urge anybody who's got a team or anybody who's working, even if you're working as a solo practitioner, you can rumble with members of your family, you can rumble with other colleagues. We've been doing some good rumbling on the BCA members page, and no, it's not anything rude before anybody says it. Look at your team and look at the contributions that they can make. What do they have? What skills do they have? What resources do they have that are available to you that you can use at this time? These are the tricky conversations. You know, sometimes rumbling with your team gets a bit awkward and it gets a bit uncomfortable, and you start getting into areas where you don't have the answers, in which case it's perfectly okay to take a break and to circle back round and come back to it at a later date. But by having these meetings and by working together for that shared purpose, you can create a much more cohesive team moving forward. There's been some really lovely examples of this with, like, Tim Paul, for example, just having his morning coffee meeting with his teams. Absolutely, like, it's brilliant. It's a lovely way to keep that connection with your team. And it helps you to say what you mean and mean what you say, because you're, at the moment, I think there's a lot of confusion and a lot of people who are paying lip service or aren't necessarily aware of the impact of the words of what they're saying. So I think it's important to create an atmosphere where your team feel able to come to you and have these conversations and to talk about the difficult stuff. And this might be a completely new way of doing it, because at the moment so many of us aren't actually working in their teams. You know, I haven't seen some of the members of my team for over a week now. So for us, for example, we have an Acorn Health Practitioners group page on Facebook. It's mainly full of conversations about cake, sometimes about gin, sometimes about sausage dogs, but it's a very informal way for us to just periodically check in with us, with each other. And by setting those expectations with your team members of what you would like to communicate to them, how you would like to communicate with them, and the ways in which they would like to be communicated with, you can make sure that you keep that team cohesion, because certainly at the moment we might all feel a bit isolated and a bit vulnerable because we're no longer surrounded by our team and we're kind of out there struggling in the dark, and we just need to communicate as much as we possibly can. So yes, say what you mean and mean what you say. Somebody contacted me the other day as well and said that they'd had some really hurtful comments from employees who are being really unhelpful and really reticent to make changes, and it is challenging, but really the best thing that we can do is not hold those comments close to us, because we can use the negativity and we can use those negative comments to build up our armour and reinforce the bad things that we all think about ourselves. But really the best thing to do is try and drop those comments at your feet and try and move on and move forward, because nobody speaks effectively or speaks clearly when they're talking from a place of fear. And certainly it's not going to serve any purpose to hang on to those feelings. So moving forwards, this is a time for a lot of us that actually I think has a real opportunity to create a massive paradigm shift in the way that we work as a profession, but also the way that we work as individuals. And certainly talking about the people who might be a bit reticent to change, there are two things that are likely to come up at the moment. As human beings, we are naturally biased towards the way that things are or the way that things were. We are very comfortable. We're back in our comfort zone. We like to do things the way that we've always done them. And so when we're talking about change, there are two things that will come up. And the first thing is nostalgia. So you might hear people saying things like, that's not the way that we do things. We've never done it that way. Sorry, that's the dog. We prefer to do X, Y, and Z. So that's the nostalgia coming into play, and the sausage dog. So when we're talking about nostalgia, the other thing that you'll notice in that is the invisible army, which is the second thing, the we. So that's not how we do things. We prefer to do it the other way. And that's something that we need to bear in mind. Is, sorry, I'm just going to pause for a second while we sort the dog out. So nostalgia and the invisible army. People use history and nostalgia to criticize different thinking and to prevent change. If you don't have an invisible army, if you are an I as opposed to a we, and you're a solo practitioner, don't use the word we. Just own it. You know, if you've made a decision and that's the one that's right for you, then just say this is something that I'm really guilty of. I tend to refer to Rhiannon and I as the royal we, because we are mostly interchangeable when it comes to things in clinic. But actually it's something that I've been working on, because we all have places where we can improve. I tend to say we for many things, whereas actually recently I've been working to say I. So don't use the royal we to prevent change. It's fear-based leadership, and it's probably not the best thing to do. And similarly, you know, moving forwards out of nostalgia and trying to move people away from the thoughts of that's not how we did things. We're all in a period of change, and again, it ties back in with acknowledging the vulnerability and acknowledging what's going on at the moment. We do have a real opportunity as professionals to move forwards. And to introduce new ways of working. Certainly from the talk yesterday, introducing telehealth is something that we might all be moving towards in the future. So we, as a profession, I think there's a lot more to be excited about than there is to fear at the moment. Obviously, the pandemic is an horrendous thing that's happening. But for us as a profession, there is a real opportunity for growth and for moving forwards and for becoming part of something much bigger. So we need to embrace the changes and have these conversations with our team members, with each other, with people like Catherine at the BCA, for example, and identify areas where we can improve, identify areas that we can change. You know, it's one of the big things that we've been looking at over the next couple of months. One of my big plans is to completely have a total overview of the way that we operate as a clinic, and the processes that we have in place, and streamline things and identify where there's room for improvement, where there are things that we're doing ineffectively. And these are going to be some of the conversations that I have with my team going forwards, and also some of the things that we're going to be bringing them along with. And we don't want to reduce their behaviour in a team down to tasks, because if we simply allocate tasks to people over this time, I know if they're furloughed at the moment, it's a bit tricky because we can't ask them to do any work. But if we, when we return to work after this period of change, if we have new tasks in place that we have come up with and we hand them down as a mandate to our employees and say, I want you to do X, Y, and Z, if it's a task-based thing and we're just giving them a black and white task to do, it's going to massively shut down their creative problem solving, and it's going to leave people with a fear of not doing it effectively, a fear of getting it wrong, and that fear of being caught doing it wrong is then going to be their motivation. So although we want to use this time as an opportunity to review, or you might want to be using this time as an opportunity to review what you're doing and to put new plans in place or change the way that you're doing things slightly, what I would say is don't make any big changes without bringing your team along with you. Communicate with them, use them as a resource, rumble with them, and have these tricky conversations, because the different way of looking at things might be something that they might bring something new to the table that you haven't necessarily thought of. And the team is your real resource. They know you, they know the clinic, they have a massive amount of value and things that they can contribute. So I'm just keeping an eye on the time because I want to make sure that we have some time at the end in case anyone's got any questions, and that question about new patients that we were going to talk to. This is going to be a hard story for us. This is going to be a difficult chapter for all of us. I think we're not alone in this. We've seen it across many professions and across many industries. I'm not going to equate my experience of this with yours. We're all experiencing this very, very differently, and everybody's experience of this situation is unique. We all have our own personal stuff going on. We all have our own clinics, teams, situations, things like that. But I think we need to own this as a hard story. We need to accept that this is going to be a difficult period, and use this experience to become more empathetic, more understanding, more forward thinking. Because if we don't own these difficult stories, they're going to own us instead. And at the end of the day, I would like to think that we're all here on this webinar because we want that connection. We want that connection with other people to know that we're not alone in what we're going through. This is a shared experience, and it's that feeling of connection that we're all getting at the moment, even though, you know, we're faces on a computer screen, we're all connected here together. We all have the skills to overcome this as well. That's an important thing to bear in mind. Although you might not think you have the skills and the resources, you do. You know, I didn't think I would have the skills or the resources to jump on here with 3 days notice, even though 3 days is quite long, but it's amazing how time flies when you're gainfully unemployed. I didn't think that I would have the capability to come on here and talk to you guys for the best part of 40 minutes on something that I find difficult to convey. But if we all step up and actually contribute, even if only in a small way, even if all you do is share a comment on social media or something, if we have 50 people doing one thing, it's so much easier than one person doing 50 things. We have a lot more in common now as a result of this experience. You know, we've all been through this together, and it has an ability to alter who we are and how we show up as a profession and as people. And I certainly think there's a lot more to be excited about for the future than there is to be afraid of at the moment. So I hope that's given you some, sorry, my computer's just decided to start drawing on the thing. I hope that's given you some food for thought. So I'm just going to come out of screen sharing now and come back to this. And yeah, does anybody have any questions? If you do have a question, can you pop your hand up and I can hopefully unmute you? And when I say pop your hand up, I think there's an ability to do that on the screen. Somebody asked a question about charging for new patients, didn't they? Yeah, so, and I've seen another one about furloughed workers allowed to volunteer their time to the business. So with regards to, Don, I thought I could divert all my patients' questions to Philippa for a sec. Sorry, Chris. With regards to charging for new patients, I think it comes back to that goodwill issue. Is if we're not charging at the moment, we're serving the NHS by alleviating a lot of the MSK burden on the NHS at the moment. I think that's what most of us are trying to do. Yes, obviously we all want to be earning money and earning income, but at the moment we don't have the answers from HMRC as to our eligibility for any income support. So my decision that I have made and what's personally working for me is that I'm not charging for telehealth in any way and in any capacity, partly because for me it's important to maintain that goodwill. I want to support the NHS around here, but that's my personal choice. I know there are other people out there who are charging, and I think you just need to make a decision that's right for you and that's congruent with your values. You know, not charging is congruent with my values, but that's me. And again, as a coach, I'm not going to tell you what to do. With regards to furloughed workers allowed to volunteer their time to the business, I think it was Emma who asked that. From my conversations with HMRC, Make UK, who are the BCA's HR people, and also the Federation of Small Businesses, they don't appear to be able to give us a definitive answer on this, but as they are actively encouraging people to volunteer their time to the NHS, the advice that I received yesterday was that it was highly unlikely that we would be penalised for volunteering our services, even if we were volunteering our services to our own companies, in effect, because there is a very strong argument to be made that we are working to support the NHS at this time, and so it's unlikely that we would be penalised. But if we're earning an income, that's where it might get a bit tricky. So volunteering is a very different situation. So that's good. I was going to use this time to go completely paperless. Is that not a good idea? I personally think completely paperless is always a great idea, but that's because I hate handwriting. So that's just me. I think certainly the way that things are moving forwards, talking about telehealth and webcam-based consultations, from the conversation yesterday, the outcomes from people who have telehealth practitioners don't seem to rate it as highly as they do interpersonal and being up close and personal with patients, certainly from the research that's available. And this webinar, yesterday's webinar with Jonathan Field, is available online, so you can access that, I think, for 30 days. The information is that practitioners don't enjoy telehealth as much as they enjoy being up close and personal with patients, but actually patients rated it, their satisfaction was they found it useful. And I certainly know of a few people who've been managed completely hands off for a range of conditions, and they haven't actually seen somebody in person.
Amy's not charging telehealth.
Sorry?
Donations for food bank.
Oh, donations for food bank for telehealth. That's a great idea. Yeah, that's a really lovely idea. So yeah, that's where we are. I've completely lost my drift again. See, so I told you I'm like Dory.
Just as ignoring the situation.
So just as ignoring the situation. That's also a good thing to do. I would say like it's really lovely, all the feedback that we're getting from everybody. Keeping busy, for me, I will accept it. I was talking to Chris about this last night. For me, it's a massive coping mechanism because I prefer to keep busy and try and be proactive. There is nothing wrong if all you have done over the past week is just sit on the sofa and stare into the distance, because it's a heck of a lot to process. You know, we have suddenly, for a lot of people, I mean, I've been a chiropractor since 2012. I can say I've never been out of work in 8 years, but there are some people who've not been out of work for sort of 38 years, you know, and this is a huge change. Our acupuncturist has not been out of work since the 70s, and, you know, she sat around twiddling her thumbs and bored to death. And it doesn't matter if all that you do is just survive and just get from one day to the next. But I think we really need to communicate effectively with each other and use the resources that we've got available. There's a huge amount of upcoming webinars. As I said earlier, there's a Wine Evans webinar next week, and I'm sure that he'll share that on the BCA members page. More webinars coming up with Chris Chip as well. Use them as a resource, use the BCA members page as a resource. We have created a small Facebook group. Again, a little bit loath no, I think it will be useful. We've created it anyway because hopefully it will be useful as somewhere where you guys can come, and if we can offer any support or guidance or any mentoring or anything like that, then we're more than happy to do that. It's called Oakley Coaching Chiropractic Clinic Support, I believe. But what I'll do is I'll start inviting people, and Rhiannon's going to put the link in as well. So you can use that as a resource as well. And we have made, on the oakleycoach.com website, we've made all of our resources there free for you guys to download. So hopefully there'll be some stuff on there that gives you some guidance and some structure for the months ahead, because we're all going to have a lot of time on our hands, yeah, a good opportunity to start planning for things moving forwards. I can see a few people asking about the link for Jonathan Field's webinar, and somebody's answered that. Yep, so that's all sorted. Can we see new patients from scratch using telehealth? Yes, we can. Our insurance does cover us, so we know that. We've heard that from the BCA. And yes, the Chancellor is announcing help for the self-employed shortly, so I'm going to make sure that we are not running over into time, because I don't want to run over. In terms of what system of telehealth people are using, Jonathan and co have set up an enormous Slack group. If anybody's using Slack, we use it in clinic to natter again about gin and cake to our clinic team, so I'm now using it for something very sensible. It's called virtual consults in MSK or something like that. Again, we'll share this, and we'll share this outside of the BCA members team as well, so it's not just BCA members who are going to benefit from this. There is a massive amount of information in there. We've set up various channels in terms of technology that you could be using, signed consent forms that you can be using, or example consent forms, the technicalities around it. At the moment, I'm working on a SWOT analysis for the various CRM systems that are available. So PhysiTrack, JNAP, Practice Pal, TM3, all of those things, so that we can work out which system is likely going to be the best, and also which telehealth system is going to work. So JNAP, for example, does the telehealth integrated within it. We're using Zoom at the moment. We're trying to do a SWOT analysis of both the telehealth hosting services and also the CRM systems to determine what the magic combo is going to be, because we don't know at the moment. So if you are interested in that, if you want to join the Slack conversation about the virtual consults in MSK, then we'll make sure that you've got the links to do that as well. And yes, I will make sure that all of these links are shared, not just BCA specific. So we will have all of those. I'm just scrolling through. How do you get consent via telehealth? It will be, probably need to be something that gets emailed out beforehand. I know with Jane it does this automatically, but again, this is one of the questions that we haven't quite answered yet, is what a telehealth consent form needs to include. We know things like care response. We know that the PROMS questionnaires, so stuff like the Bournemouth questionnaire, MyMop and things like that, those are fine for gathering data for telehealth as well. So we don't need to worry about using different PROMS and PREMS questions before we're having these telehealth consultations, so we can continue to use care response if anybody is using it. So yes, I think that is pretty much everything. In terms of CPD certifications for this webinar, we are going to be sending them out. You'll have to bear with us because there are 200 of you lovely lot, which is incredible. But yes, we will be sending them out. And if you would like to receive information from us, if you'd like some of the downloads or things like that, then if you again pop onto the Oakley Coach website and sign up via the Contact Us form, then we can send you information about upcoming webinars and things like that. So I really hope that's been helpful, if only to provide a bit of reassurance and a bit of food for thought for the coming weeks and months. And again, because my diary and Rhiannon's diary has magically freed up for some unknown reason, we have a lot of time on our hands, so please do get in touch. We don't have all the answers, but you know, we can help coach you through this and help you find out solutions that work for you. Because again, what works for us might not work for you. That's the joy of coaching. But we can certainly work with you to try and find a way that moves forward. And I just I don't want anybody to feel like you're in this alone, because we're not. We're so much stronger. I can start rolling out cliches. We're going to be so much stronger if we actually try and work together and try and support each other. So this has been really, really lovely, and I'd like to thank you all for joining. If anybody does have any questions or anything, I'm happy to hang on for a bit longer and can unmute you all, unless you all want to run off and see what Richie has to say about the self-employed. So I'll hang out here for a little while longer and unmute you all and see what comes up. Okay.
671.
Okay, everybody is now unmuted, so thank you very much. So does anybody have any questions or anything that they want to ask? I'll manage your location now. You're happy.
Go change it on.
Do it on your app, yeah. Look, mine's off.
I think I clicked on something whilst I was clicking on all the other stuff.
Oh, probably, yeah.
So,
You know, I have to download it. So I will send the links. I'll post the links to our Facebook, our little Facebook coaching support group in the BCA members page, and also on the Oakley Coach page as well for those of you who aren't BCA members. And Rhiannon has put the links to all of the various bits that we've referred to. I think she shared the links in the timeline. Yes, I can see the link for the Facebook group in there. And I will just try and collate everything into one place for you. So Anne, can you give me examples of how people were managing their patients on telehealth? Yeah, so I think Owain is going to be talking about this in a bit more detail next week. In terms of managing their patients on telehealth, I'm not getting a huge amount of people through telehealth. I get sort of one, possibly two a day, which is, you know, is fine for now, because I'm not expecting there to be an awful amount. In terms of how I'm managing people, there is a huge amount. I mean, I don't know anybody who remembers back to university. We were always told 90% of what we need to know from patients comes from the case history. So for me, the telehealth, the focus is the case history exactly as normal. It's just done via webcam. Again, in the virtual consults group, we're currently collating a list of orthopedic exercises that it might be possible for us to do over telehealth, for example, if you've got somebody and they've got a friend nearby and they can do the arm squeeze test for cervical radiculopathy, we know that that's a very, very sensitive test, cervical radiculopathy. So it's something that we can potentially get people to do to aid with our diagnosis. So again, it's this creative thinking and thinking outside the box, but we are working on a list of orthopedic tests, certainly the most specific and the ones that we're most likely to be able to do. So that will be available as a resource. So case history as normal, orthopedic tests as much as we possibly can. And then the rest of it actually mainly comes down to that reassurance, which time and time again is just the thing that I come back to as being, in my opinion, it's one of the most important things that we can do and one of the most powerful things that we can do, because particularly at the moment, we know there's going to be, or we don't know, but we suspect that there's going to be a spike in MSK stuff over the next couple of months anyway, because people are anxious, people are stressed, and of course we know that anxiety, depression, stress are the big triggers for back pain. So I think although everything is a bit quiet at the moment, we're certainly gearing up for, as things settle down, we're going to start to be called into play a little bit more, and so we're probably going to see a little bit more work trickling through. So we definitely need to be thinking about these things in advance, and the information that we're getting is that this might be something that we all start to look to move over towards, particularly looking at the effectiveness of web-based stuff for psychotherapeutic interventions, so things like CBT. So all of those CBT strategies that we incorporate as part of our treatment plans, those can be delivered very effectively over telehealth. So it's possible that things might get subdivided. It might be that we do hands-on care and we do telehealth based consults. They're convenient, people like them, they don't have to leave home. It's been very lovely because I can sit here and talk to you guys while my roast chicken is cooking in the oven. So it's very, very lovely. So and I've been reliably informed that Mr. Sunak is now on TV, so if anybody wants to jump in and to hear what he's got to say about the self-employed, I'm sure we'll all be listening with ears that are pricked. So we are going to jump off now unless anybody's got any more questions, but as I said, please do get in touch with us. Please do drop us a message, say that you're happy for us to email you so that we can send you the resources, and ask to be invited to the Oakley Coaching group, because we're there to offer some support. We're working on upcoming seminars on things that we want to talk about, and things that we would find useful. So if we've got things that you want answered or anything that we can support you with, then please do let me know so that we can guide things in the future. Because again, as leaders, we don't want to give you information that we think you want to hear. We'd much rather give you information or talk to you about things that you want to know, and things that you decide are helpful. So it really is useful to have that feedback from you all. So yeah, Catherine, as directors, we are the in-betweeners, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. So thank you all very much. This has been great. I really appreciate you all joining us, and we will see you next time. So, and I will make this webinar available to you so you can listen back. All right, take care all. Bye-bye.